Hi, I'm Jennifer Bloom, Soul Abundance Guide at jenniferbloom.com, and I'm here today to give you a short introduction to a healing technique that I use, which is called Emotional Freedom Technique. Now, you might have heard about this technique called tapping or psychological acupressure. There's a lot of different ways that this particular technique has been described. But I just want to give you a short introduction so you understand what you're doing when you tap. So this technique has its roots in something called thought field therapy, and that was developed back in the 80s by a therapist named Roger Callahan. And he was working with a client who had a severe phobia to water. She didn't want to be in the bathtub, she didn't want to be in the shower, she had terrible dreams about water. It was something that was very consuming. So he was working with her to help her release this phobia. And Roger Callahan was very interested in Chinese medicine. And what he started to apply to this particular patient's case was his understanding that within Chinese medicine, there are a couple pieces of information. The first is that our body's energy is lined up in lines called meridians. And there's a number of meridians throughout the body. The second piece of information is that for every organ that we have in our body, there's a meridian that's attached to it, and that meridian has beginning points and end points. And then finally, every organ, again, within the Chinese medicine system, has a particular emotion attached to it. So he talked to his client and he said, okay, so when you are feeling all of these feelings, what's the most basic feeling that you have? What's the most prevalent feeling? And she said fear. So what he had her do was think about water while she tapped on the meridian line that was the ending point for the stomach, because what he knew was that fear was based in the stomach, again, based on Chinese medicine principles. That meridian line happens to end under the eye. So he had her tap under her eye, and what happened was pretty amazing. The next day, when he came to find her for therapy, she was nowhere to be found. She was down at the local pool with her feet in the water, or so the lore goes. All right. So what he found was that tapping on the meridian line cleared that line of an obstruction that was holding this woman's phobia in place. He went on again to create what's called thought field therapy, which takes into account, there's a lot of different recipes, so to speak. There's a lot of different protocols based on what you're feeling. You tap on a certain number of meridian lines, and it gets confusing, or at least that's what Gary Craig thought when he learned about it. Again, Gary Craig, Stanford engineer, but very interested in self-development. And what Gary Craig did was he said, look, why don't we put together something that's a little bit easier, where it doesn't matter what you're feeling, but this one sequence of tapping can be just as effective. And that is where EFT came from. That's the birth of Emotional Freedom Technique. He put together a series of points that you tap on with your fingers, and that clears the meridian lines of any obstructions that are holding in place some sort of negative emotion or negative physical symptom within your body. So that is the origin of where this technique comes from, and let me share with you how to do it. So the first thing to talk about are the points. And these are points that are used actually in acupuncture. So when you are touching them or tapping on them, you're using just really light pressure. That's all that you need. So the first point is the outside edge of your hand. And this is on the side of your hand below the knuckle from your pinky. And you're going to tap with 2 fingers, sometimes 3 fingers. What you're going to discover is this is a very intuitive technique that you will grow into. But start with 2 fingers, and it's right on the side. It's like right where you would karate chop a block of wood. Okay. The next point is the inside end of your eyebrow. The next point is the side of your eye. You're on the bone, right where the eyelids come together. Next point is under your eye. Again, you're on the bone, and if you are looking straight ahead, you're right under where the center of your pupil is. And with these points, your eyebrow, side of your eye, under your eye, and the rest of the ones on your face, you're going to use one finger, maybe two fingers. Okay. Next point is under your nose, chin, collarbone. This one, let me put my glasses back on. You're going to find your collarbone and you're going to trace it down towards the center, towards the center of your chest, because you're towards your sternum. When you get to the end of your collarbone, you're going to find that there's a bit of a knobby end to it, and you're just going to drop down about an inch. And what you'll find is that there's a bit of a depression there. So you tap there. If you're feeling like you have no idea where this point is, you can also make just a really soft fist and thump with the thumb side. So there's two more points. The next one is under your arm. It's about 3 inches down from the center of your armpit, on the side of your chest. And so ladies, this is about in the center of where your bra strap is. You can either take your hand and you can tap with the side of your hand on the side of your chest, or you can reach across and tap that way. This is more comfortable for me. You can do whichever. The next point is, and the last point that we're going to use for this version of EFT, is we're going to tap at the top of your head, so the crown, like where a yarmulke would sit, and you're going to tap in a small circle. Many of the major meridians end up here. And so you may find actually that's a little bit sensitive. Okay. So that's the final point. Now, what we do is we pair tapping with language that tells the body what it is that you either want to release or what you want to bring into your body. So it looks like this. When you're on the side of the hand, you start tapping, and then you say the phrase, even though I'm feeling X, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. So even though I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Or even though I have this massive headache, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And you say that phrase 3 times while you're tapping here. And then while you are tapping the rest of the points, you create what's called a reminder phrase, which is just a shortened version of what you said here. And the whole reason why you're saying the language is to bring the emotion up in your body. So you would tap and say, terrible headache. And then you come to the side of your eye, terrible headache. Or if you're feeling overwhelmed, overwhelmed. Under your nose, so overwhelmed. Under your lip, so overwhelmed I can hardly breathe. Okay, you're saying a phrase that is, again, it's to remind you of what it is that you're trying to release. And as you bring that feeling up in your body and you tap on the point, your body knows which meridian to clear. Okay, now a couple extra pieces here is that you can tap with your right hand or your left hand. It doesn't matter. But what you want to make sure that you do is that you stay on the same side of the body. So if I'm taking my right hand and tapping on my left, then I'm going to take my right hand and I'm going to tap on the right side of my body. I'm not going to cross. This is called crossing the midline. Midline meaning this is the center of your body. You don't want to use your right hand and tap on the left side of your body. The only exception to this is if you are tapping under your arm. If you prefer to reach across, that is a crossing the midline, and that's okay. So it really doesn't matter. But what I tend to tell clients is pick one side and do that regularly. If you find the issue isn't changing, you can always switch over to the other side. And again, like I said, this is an intuitive technique. I just worked with somebody today who said, you know what, my right side feels like it needs a little bit of extra love and tapping. So we switched hands, and it was just fine. So again, either one. Also remember, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, these acupressure points are the same points that you would use in acupuncture. So when you're tapping, you're going to tap with enough pressure that you're going to feel it, but not so much that you're going to leave a bruise. Okay, Gary Craig talked about how when you're tapping, it's like you're sending thunder down those meridian lines. So don't feel like you have to really bang on there. The frequency of tapping is like tap, 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 tap. Okay. People tend to ask me, well, how many times should I tap on that point? I believe the official number of taps is somewhere between 7 and 9. But usually when you're using, if you're tapping with the frequency of tap, 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 you are going to be, if you're tapping while you're saying your phrase, certainly on the outside edge of your hand, but even when you come up to the reminder phrases, you're going to tap plenty of times. So that's really the guideline that you want to use. You want to tap for as long as you're saying your phrase. An advanced tip is that you might at some point feel like you need to stay and tap a little bit longer on that point, and just listen to your body. All right. Now there's two more pieces I want to share with you. The first is that as you are tapping, we can tap things that you're going to release and also tap what you want to bring into your body. Now, as you're tapping, either with the positives or the negatives, you may find that you are, as you're tapping, you might be reminded of a memory, or you might start getting a pain in a different part of your body, or you might get a thought or some sort of emotion. Those are important to pay attention to. Okay, this is another sort of advanced tip. But your subconscious, because that's the level that we're working on here, your subconscious is giving you clues about where that the original issue you're working on, what the next step is to do the release work. All right. And then finally, you want to rate your before and after feelings. This technique can work so fully that you almost even forget what you are working on. So what you do is you're going to rate on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 meaning I have no intensity of this emotion, feeling, thought, pain, whatever it is that you're tapping for. And 10 is the most exquisite, fullest, most intense version of what I can imagine. So let's say that you were tapping for a headache. You would stop, you would take a breath, you would notice how much, you would rate your pain on a scale of 0 to 10. Do your tapping, stop, take a breath, and then notice again what that rating is. That's going to help you understand whether the technique is working for you or whether you need to tap in a little bit different way. Sometimes coming down from a 9 to an 8 is all of the relief that you need. But really, truly, the goal with EFT is to get whatever you're feeling, thinking, experiencing down to a 0. So if you are feeling overwhelmed, you want to keep doing your tapping until you get down to 0. The way that you do that is by getting a little bit more specific with your language. If you start out by saying, even though I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I deeply, completely love and accept myself. That's a pretty general statement. EFT works best the more specific you can be. So the example I always give is if you're trying to pop a balloon, if you blow in just a couple of puffs of air, it's really hard to pop, right? You're going to have that pin and you're you're trying to get a hole in it. But if you take a balloon and you blow it up to its very edges, and then you take a pin, and all you have to do is just barely touch it, and the thing's going to explode. So for example, you might say, even though I'm so overwhelmed by all of the household responsibilities I have, or even though I'm feeling so overwhelmed because nobody is helping me and I'm always asking, or even though I'm feeling really overwhelmed because my partner is ignoring me, right? See how each of those is getting a little bit more specific? And that's the kind of thing that will come up as you're tapping. You'll get more specific ideas and more specific ideas. All right. So this went a little bit from an introduction to EFT to some more advanced tips. What I really want you to walk away with is just the demonstration of the points, the understanding of the language. You can tap right hand or left hand. It doesn't matter. Just be consistent and stay on the same side. And tap with enough pressure that you're feeling it, but that you aren't leaving bruises. Those are the very basics to remember as you step into the other videos that I do. And then you'll be able to tap right along and understand what we're doing. If you have any questions, drop me a comment here on the video. I'm more than happy to answer them. Or you can reach out to me at jenniferbloom.com. And again, I'm more than happy to answer questions about EFT. All right, everyone, until we meet again, I offer you prosperous blessings. I will see you soon. Take care.